Hello YouTube, welcome to part 3 of the review. In the last video, the video got cut for some reason. So, yeah, excuse me for that. Now let's continue. Right, we were talking about the term reset button. Let's just focus. Right, so yeah, then here we got show trims. So let's hit yes. As you can see here, under the trim, we have this tiny number.
Trim center.
This is the option that shows the number. Normally, when we turn off this feature, the numbers don't show up.
Trim center.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Let's look for the other features. So, trim steps. Let's have a look at that. I'm not sure what does it mean. Let's just hit Expo and see.
Maximum trim reach.
Right, it basically controls. It adds Expo in the amount of trims. So see,
Maximum trim reach.
in the end, it does drastically raise up.
Trim center.
Just leave the default one, the fine one. Then throttle, we got the throttle reverse. Let's check this one out. Monitors, as you can see, it's inverted now. When I move the throttle all the way up, it gives me -100, while all the way down is 100%. So yeah, it's basically reverses the throttle channel. I can't see how it's that useful, but it's there if you need it. And this is the source. Which axis do you need the throttle to be? You can even set the throttle on a switch. Let's just try that out for the phone, just to check the feature. So yeah, it won't seem to work. I don't know why. Maybe because the firmware is incomplete? I don't know. Let's just not mess with that. Right, throttle, alright. Throttle trim, I'm not sure what is it exactly about, so just not mess with that. Then we got throttle warning and switches warning. The switches warning are on, but they don't seem to work. Again, maybe because this is an incomplete firmware. And then here's a cool feature. Let's activate it for rudder, aileron, elevators, throttle, and aileron. So each time I center these sticks, you will hear the beep. It's useful so you can tell when's the center at any time without looking at the transmitter. But it's a bit annoying, so I'll turn it off. And 1 and 2 are for these knobs. So whenever I center them, you will hear a beep. Maybe I'll just keep them for the knobs for now. And this is the internal RF. RF is the transmitter. So if you want to use the external one, the one you mount right here, you have to turn the internal one off and the external one to whatever protocol you're using. But since I don't have that, I'll just use the internal one. And then here you get the protocol you want to use. I will most probably use S-Bus because it's most supported. It's the most supported protocol by other products in general, even flight controllers. But the iBus is arguably the one with the lowest latency. But it's not a huge difference, so just keep it as S-Bus. Yes, S-Bus. You can choose the channel range. You can reduce the amount of channels the transmitter outputs, I'll assume that it will save the battery power, but I'll just leave them all on for now. And then this is the receiver frequency. You can adjust this from here. You can also set failsafe. So I believe the hold function, the hold failsafe, is whenever the remote disconnects from the drone, whatever controls you have inputted will be the one that the aircraft will stay on until you reconnect. However, you can custom your own failsafe. So for each channel, for instance channel 1, the aileron, you can set the failsafe. So maybe you want to keep it in a circle always, to the right or to the left. You may even, let's just set the default one. The default is set to 0 in some cases. But the most useful one will be the throttle. Most cases, you want the throttle to be dropped to 0. So the aircraft, in case of a fixed plane, will not drift too far away. But I'll adjust that sometime later. Right, then we got a second menu. Inside the aircraft setup, you got the helicopter setup. You got swashplate and lots of other features, but since I never flew a helicopter, I have no clue what all these features about, so I'll just skip it for now. Alright, then we got flight modes. On OpenTX, they're very simple to set up. Let's suppose here, we'll name the first flight mode as auto level. So let's call it auto. Oops. Right, then the second one, we'll name it as acro. And then set a switch on it for it. So switch A in the top position. Of course, you do not need to set a switch for the first flight mode, since it will be the one in default. Alright, let's have a look. Let's adjust the menu a bit so that it shows the flight modes. Alright, see? Here it says auto level. I can flick the switch. It will be in acro mode. What are exactly the applications of flight modes? Let's have a look in the second menu. The inputs. You can actually have a different input setup for different flight modes. For instance, the aileron, let's edit that. So down here you'll see the modes. You can set up to 8 different flight modes. Let's go back. So yeah, FM and then the number. You have up to FM 8, so you got 8 flight modes. And then here, for let's suppose the elevator channel, let's edit that. So you want in the acro mode, which is mode 1. No, is it? Yes, it's mode 1. 0 does not. It counts from 0. It's my second mode, so 0 doesn't count. You don't have to turn off all the other flight modes since they are already not set up. So you just have to keep it as 0. And then what you do is I click and then insert after. We'll go to this menu, but we go back, we actually have different profiles. For the second profile, let's edit that. We'll keep it as flight mode 1. So here's an indicator. No, actually it should be the second one. Oops. Right. So it will underline every single flight mode except for the flight mode we turned off. So now when I change the flight mode, it will highlight the one that's active. Of course, it's still, I didn't change anything. I just switched to the channel that will be activated during the flight mode. I can edit, and here we'll see the different options we can have. So we can add a switch. I'll just discuss that in one moment. We can choose a source of the input, but we'll just keep that aileron, and then we can change its scale and also the weight. The weight is basically the sensitivity. You can see this graph. When I move the aileron, the elevator, the point will move. X-axis is the input, is your input, and the y-axis is the output. So you can change the weight. Let's reduce the weight. So 100 is always the maximum weight. You can reduce it. Say 9. Oops. Right. So the switch should be flicked based upon the flight mode you selected. So we can change the weight. You can see the graph will be flatter. It will be less steeper. So what does that mean is that the sensitivity will be reduced, and also the maximum travel will be reduced. Handy. So you can, for gliding, you can use that, and then when you want to hit sports mode or acro mode, it gets back to its full sensitivity. There's another way to do so, by turning off the flight mode. Let's just turn them all on, and then what you can do is, oops, I went out. What you can do is actually select a switch. Let's have switch A to the top, and then for the other one we'll have switch A to the bottom. So as you can see, I can still do this exact same function with one switch, except with flight modes you can actually do it for multiple inputs, while the switch is generally only for single channel. So let's have a look at the monitors. So the elevator is currently working at full travel. When I switch it off, or when I flick the switch for gliding mode, it has only a maximum travel of 50%, because I kept the weight here at 50%. You can change it, of course. You can change the weight. You can also leave it as negative. Let's have a look. The minimum value, negative 100. This basically inverts the channel. Let's have a look at the monitor. So when I move the stick all the way upwards, it gives me a negative 100, while downwards give me a positive 100. So this one way, oops, not again. Sorry, my bad. So this is one way at which you can reverse these channels, right? There are many things you can do in this menu, but let's not just take too much time on just this menu. We'll just return that to default and head for another interesting menu. What's wrong? Right. So that's back to normal. And then here's another menu, interesting one. It's the mixer. It allows us to drive one output with multiple channels. It's a bit difficult to explain. Let me just show you how it works. So one of the most common mixes we've got is Elevon. When mixing both the elevator and aileron, we're only using two servos or two outputs. Let's have a look. How does that work? So here's the aileron, here's the elevator. What we want to do is insert after, head back, click on the aileron, insert after, go back. So now we added two profiles we have to edit. So in the aileron channel, we want to add the elevator factor, right? And in the elevator channel, we want to add the aileron factor right here. All right, you can see. And then also we want to make it -100. Why is that? Because in the aileron, the servos will be actually moving in opposite directions so we can steer. While in ailerons, elevators, they will move in the flaps should move in the exact same direction so that we can either move upwards or downwards. Let's have a look at the monitors. So when I push the elevator, both channels work together in the same direction. When I start using the aileron, they move in opposite directions. I will dedicate a separate video on mixes. We'll be doing many different mixes. But for now, we'll have a short walkthrough throughout the entire menus, right? The next menu looks like it has a servo icon. It's the output channel, the output menu. Let's edit that. We can add a name to it. We can add sub-trims. We can also choose its maximum travel endpoints. Helpful maybe in your aircraft. You cannot physically move your control surface to more than a certain limit. So you can actually set some endpoints from this menu. You can also invert it by checking this box. It's a much faster, easier way than to invert it using a -100 weight. You can also add some curves. Speaking of curves, I actually forgot lots of features in this menu. That's actually in the input menu. I forgot to speak about the curves. Let's quickly talk about that. So there's Expo. Let's actually have a look how it looks on the graph. So as you can see, the graph has some exponential in it. So how is that useful? When I move the sticks to the inside, like I will not use all my limit, just a little bit, it will not be as sensitive. And then when I move it all the way in the last bit, it will be so much more sensitive. That's useful when you're flying a very sensitive and fast aircraft. You want to still handle it slowly and safely using the inside inputs. However, let's suppose that you have an obstacle in front of you. So all you have to do is simply just move your stick all the way and sensitivity will be back to its maximum, where you can bail out or avoid the obstacle. Pretty handy. There are also other curves, such as the diff. It looks like this. It also has a negative. Oops. You can have negative diff. There are many features or many applications for such curves. There's also function. It has lots of shapes for graphs. But for now, let's just have normally the 0%. Of course, you can set on Twitch flight mode on this profile 4. Right. Let's just go back where we been a few minutes ago. So yeah, in the output channel, you can also add those curves. As you can see here, the curves, there are curve 1, 2, there are lots of curves actually. What are these exactly? We'll actually have a look at them in the next menu. You can also change the center point and the subtrim mode. I'm not sure what is that exactly, but let's just have a look at the curves. So let's suppose we don't know much about mathematics, we don't know nothing about Expo or all that stuff. So you can actually have a graphical interface. You can shape your own graph. You can also give it a name. So you have also two types. You can also select two types. We'll see the difference just in a moment. You can also select how many points in the graph. 7 points you can edit. But let's just keep it simple and choose 5 points. Right? You can also smoothen that out, but let me just hit that. So you can actually adjust the height of the first point. And then let's have the second point next. You can lower that. You can also set them left or right. Alright, okay. So in standard you cannot set them for left or right. But in custom you actually can. As you can see. So I can take the point left. It's a bit small touchscreen, needs some time to get used to. Anyways, you can set left or right, and you can also smoothen the graph. See, you can make it sharp or a bit smoother. So this is the curve menu. Just clear that out. Oh, you can also mirror that. Inverse the direction. Excuse the notification. Yes, right. You can also edit the logical switches. What are these? You can set your own custom switches with different functions. However, I'm only going to show you AND and OR switches. So I set AND. For instance, switch A and switch B to the uppermost position. Alright? And then here we'll set the OR function. Switch A again and switch B. So how does that work? So in the OR function, if I have either switch A or B, it will work. But for the AND, I have to keep them both on, as you can see. So if I need the OR function, any of the switches can be upwards. If I have the AND function, both of them must be upwards. Handy feature, you can use them to switch on between the flight modes and other settings in the input menu. Let's have a look at special functions. Here you can turn on some special functions. I select the trainer, override. You can also set your volumes, even the brightness by a switch. Handy, but let's just go for the next menus. We got telemetry. Telemetry is that data transmitted from the receiver, the tiny receiver I showed in part 1, to the remote. It's basically only data. For instance, RSSI. It stands for Receiver Signal Strength Indicator. It's basically a figure that we can use to check how strong is our signal with the receiver. You can choose your own low alarm, critical alarm. So if it goes beyond, it goes lower than this value, it will start beeping, telling you that you have a weak signal. You can add your own sensors. It will only discover them automatically. However, I do not have sensors right now. Sensors can be like for temperature, can be for speed. I believe you can also connect a GPS module in some way so you can receive the altitude and distance from the takeoff points. You can also add your own vario. And that's pretty much it for the aircraft menu. We also have the radio menu. Here you can adjust the radio settings. You can adjust the date. However, I can't right now because I should upgrade the firmware. the current firmware you cannot adjust the date for some reason. You can input the battery range, you can the volumes, value, the one we just saw in the telemetry. You can choose the volume for it, for the telemetry. I'm not sure what haptic is, but it's there. You can set a battery low alarm, also RSSI. You can choose your brightness. Seems a bit too bright for the camera. Let's just lower that. You can also set the off brightness. So after such a delay, after some delay, you can set the brightness. Let's test that already. So after 5 seconds of inactivity, the brightness will be much lower. You can set your GPS. I believe it's just too high for the camera right now, so just lower the brightness. Right. You can set GPS settings. You can select units. You can also change the voice language. Let's try German. Of course, we got English. Let's try Spanish. But for now, just keep in English. You can choose between imperial and metric units. You can choose the order of the channels. You can also select the mode your remote is. Alright, so for now, we'll just take a break. The next video we'll continue, because it's getting too long. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next part.